All right, let's dive way, way back in time. We're going to uncover the story of a real-life monster. I'm talking about a creature that was so huge, so powerful, it almost sounds like something out of a movie. So, when you think about the biggest predator in the Amazon, what comes to mind? Maybe a jaguar? Or, a massive anaconda? Good guesses, for sure, but you're not thinking nearly big enough, not even close. The real king of the ancient Amazon? Well, that was something else entirely. Let's get right into it. Okay, so this whole story, it doesn't start with a big dramatic roar. It starts with a puzzle, just a single really confusing clue that was dug up from a world that's been gone for millions of years. This is basically a detective story for scientists, and it all begins deep, deep underground. So picture this. We're in this gigantic open-pit coal mine in Cerrejón, Colombia. But try to imagine this place 60 million years ago. It wasn't a mine at all. It was this vast, swampy rainforest just absolutely packed with life. And that coal they're digging up, that is the ancient jungle, all compressed down over millions of years. It's basically the perfect time capsule. And as researchers were digging through all this stuff, they found something weird. A fossil that was so big and just strangely shaped that nobody had a clue what it was. Seriously, the guesses were all over the map. Is it part of a giant crocodile? Maybe a huge turtle shell? Some people even thought, hey, maybe it's not even a bone, just a fossilized tree trunk. For years, nobody knew. Well, that confusion finally came to an end when this mystery fossil got sent over to the Florida Museum of Natural History. The experts there started looking at it, putting the pieces together, and they figured out what it was. And honestly, the answer was just shocking. So here's the aha moment. The scientists took this fossil and put it side by side with a vertebra that's a piece of the spine from a modern green anaconda, and the difference was just, whoa. It was staggering. The ancient bone wasn't just a little bigger, it was 3 times larger. At that point, there was no doubt. This thing was a snake. And here's the crazy part. Just from that one single bone, scientists could actually calculate how long the entire snake was. And their conclusion just blew every single record for a snake completely out of the water. They figured it was, get this, 50 feet long. 50! That's almost unbelievable. Okay, let's try to wrap our heads around that. 50 feet. That's longer than a city bus. Just picture a snake that could stretch from the driver's seat all the way down the aisle to the very back door and still have some length to spare. It's just massive. And it wasn't just about the length. Oh no, the weight was just as mind-blowing. Scientists estimate this thing weighed around 1,200 kilograms. That's 1.2 metric tons. So what does that even mean? It means it was heavier than your average car, and it was 10 times heavier than the biggest, baddest anacondas alive today. The scientists knew they had found the absolute king of all snakes. So of course, they give it a name to match, Titanoboa. Okay, so the big question is, how? How does a snake get that big? I mean, there's nothing on Earth today that's even in the same league. And the answer, it turns out, wasn't just about the snake. It was about the world it lived in. Right, so you've probably heard the term cold-blooded. The more scientific term is ectothermic. It just means that, unlike us, mammals, snakes can't make their own body heat. They completely depend on the temperature outside to get their engine, their metabolism, running. And this all boils down to a really simple rule in biology. The hotter it is, the faster a cold-blooded animal's metabolism works. And if your metabolism is running on high, you can digest food better, you can grow way faster, and you can get way, way bigger. So for a body as gigantic as Titanoboa's to even work, its world had to be hot, like really hot. Scientists figured out that the average temperature back then was at least 32 degrees Celsius. That's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, all the time. It was basically a permanent hothouse. And that intense, constant heat, that was the secret sauce. That's what allowed this giant to exist. All right, so you're a 1,200 kilogram snake. You're gonna need a lot of food. But you're definitely not chasing anything down on land, right? You're just too big. So your hunting strategy had to be just as incredible as your size. Yeah, Titanoboa wasn't hunting on land. No way. It was way too heavy. Gravity would have made it super slow. Instead, it was an ambush predator that lived in the water. Think of it like a giant crocodile. It spent most of its time submerged, letting the water support its huge body. It would just wait, hidden in the murky swamp. And then, when some unsuspecting animal came down for a drink, bam, it would strike. And after that strike came the squeeze, an absolutely crushing, suffocating squeeze. Scientists have run the numbers, and they estimate its constriction force was around 400 pounds per square inch, 400 psi. Now, 400 psi might not mean much on its own, so try this. That is the same pressure as having two full-grown African elephants standing right on your chest. I mean, a grip like that wouldn't just suffocate you, it would stop your blood from flowing and shatter your bones instantly. It was a quick, brutal, and absolutely terrifying end. So what does a snake that powerful even eat? Well, it turns out it ate other giants. Fossils from that same mine show that Titanoboa lived alongside huge turtles, we're talking the size of a pool table, and massive prehistoric crocodiles. For Titanoboa, even other top predators were just lunch. Okay, so if this thing was the undisputed king, no predators, nothing to worry about, where did it go? Why isn't it still out there? The answer is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. The world changed. And this is where you can see exactly what happened. The very thing that made Titanoboa so huge, that extreme heat, it ended up being its biggest weakness. See, after its time, the planet started to cool down slowly but surely. And for an animal that absolutely needed that constant 32-degree heat just to survive, well, a cooling planet was a death sentence. It really was the perfect storm. The cooling climate slowed down its metabolism, making it sluggish and weak. At the same time, its swampy home started drying up. And to top it all off, a whole new kind of animal was starting to take over: mammals. They created new competition for food that was already getting scarce. The king's reign was over. Its empire just fell apart. You know, the story of Titanoboa is just this incredible reminder of how closely life is tied to climate. Just a few degrees of change was enough to completely erase the biggest snake that ever lived. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? If a bit of climate change could do that to a giant of the past, what could it do to our world today?